All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's welcome to our October Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. It's hard to believe it's October already, and certainly the temperature outside is indicative of that. So we, before we get started on our applications, I did want to make a couple editorial notes of the administrative side. Michelle was kind enough to send out some meeting minutes this afternoon. Let's not worry about trying to review and approve those necessarily tonight, unless someone wants to make a motion for that effect. But give people time to look them over. We're just a little bit behind on a couple of our last meetings, so I figured maybe in our November meeting we could kind of, get that all kind of cleaned up and everything, and be back on track. And especially because we do have two applications tonight, and both of them are here for a vote. And these are the same applications that we heard in September. And both applicants were kind enough to come back tonight and, address some of the things that the committee had, and also Commissioner Carter, and I think some others in the community. So with that, I don't believe I have other housekeeping items to mention. And so I'm going to, the first application tonight is the Isaac Newton Square Final Development Plan. And I see Mr. Painter is here tonight. I think, and as everyone maybe realizes, Elizabeth Baker was here at the last meeting. And, and again, just real quick, we are trying to get through everybody's comments and hear from everybody, but this is a final development plan. The conceptual development plan was previously approved, not only by our committee, but by the county. And then Andrew can give us kind of like the status of where things stand with the county, and then how, some of the comments and previous issues that were raised have been addressed. And again, they will be looking for a vote tonight. And again, try to be cognizant of the whole committee's time. We're trying to kind of limit each person's comments to, roughly the 3-minute type of time frame. So let's try to be aware of that tonight. And then if you're not speaking, I ask you to put your phone on mute or your computer on mute. And with that, I will turn it over to Andrew.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney at the law firm of Walsh Colucci. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces here. As the chair said, I was not able to make last month's meeting. I actually fell ill, and nothing COVID related, but I guess we've all kind of forgotten, at least I did, about what it means to get sick. So this is the Isaac Newton Square Final Development Plan application. We held our public hearing in September. The decision on the final development plan was deferred until this Wednesday. We have worked with staff to resolve a number of issues, and staff does recommend approval of the final development plan. We've also worked intently with staff and with Commissioner Carter on addressing some issues that were brought up, including at last month's Planning and Zoning Committee. Commissioner Carter, I don't know if you wanted to say a couple of words at all before I launched into my presentation, but I'd be happy to defer to you if you like, since we've been working on it, or we can wait.
What do you think, Rob? Rob?
Yeah, John, please, if you have some comments, please go ahead and jump right in there.
Well, I can talk about what we've gone over. Do you want me to do that?
I think that'll be very helpful. Yes.
Okay, I had 4 comments from the last time, and we've got a little more articulate about them. Number 1 was the tree preservation. So we found out the trees are 40+ years old. Those willow oaks can live over 100 years. So they're at their prime now. So they've adjusted to where they are. We know they're in an east-west location, so they get full sun during the day, pretty good. They're 50 feet, maybe 60 feet from the nearest building that would block the sun from the south. The utilities are mostly in place already now, and they're in the street and on the south side away from the building. Any new utilities could go down the existing street. And we have a new proffer about the urban forester. And I've actually worked with them quite a bit. So they're all linked up with this. So that's the tree preservation, and there's a new now condition about that. The next one was the street, and this is kind of a pet thing that we're learning here in Reston. It's a private street, and there are several developers that are likely be along that private street. And what we found, particularly in the Lake Ann area, when you have several developers, if the street is owned by those adjacent developers, you have one street that's controlled by several owners at the same time that may have different notions about maintenance and public access. So we have a new condition that will take care of that. So there will be an overall entity that'll take care of the street maintenance and public access. The third point was the design of it. And as you all know, this is kind of a pet thing of mine. It is got the attention of the commission as well. There are a few details that we'd like to get in these that are different than the normal things we do in Fairfax County. Number one is straight curbs instead of these rolled curbs that we have been using in different locations. So we got that straightened out. Double crosswalks at the intersection. So instead of a single crosswalk is the normal Fairfax County thing. In a single crosswalk, you direct the handicap or strollers into the intersection. With a double crosswalk, you direct the ramps into the crosswalks themselves. Sounds like a simple thing, but we don't always get that. And then the third big one is there is a notion in stormwater management to have these depressed areas around the tree boxes. And I really don't like that. And I think the rest of the commission has come attuned to that as well. So when you get out of your car on the passenger side, you can balance yourself on the curb, which if you're a gymnast and you're used to working on the balance beam, that works real well. But for most people, balancing yourself on the curb and taking your next step down into the depressed area is really a bad thing. So we're going to have a step out area on the curb of 18 inches to 2 feet. Then we're going to eliminate that depression. And the applicant had a hard time doing this. Maybe we were a little late in getting to them about this issue. So they're going to bring the grading up to the sidewalk level. So you're not going to fall into a trough. Then there's going to be an area between the those tree boxes, and which will in theory be between the cars, so you can get to your front door without going through those depressed areas. They're keeping the depressed areas and areas where there is no on-street parking. And they'll be putting a short fence around there. So if you're in a wheelchair, or if you've got a walker, or if you've got a cane, or if you're not watching, you won't be tripping and falling into those depressed areas. So that's been cleaned up. So whenever there is a on-street parking, there'll be no depression there. And so that takes care of the initial design. And then when they come back, when the buildings start coming in, we're going to have trees 30 feet on center. We're going to have pedestrian-oriented lights. These would be the low lights at 60 feet on center, approximately. And then we'll continue with the straight curbs. So that kind of takes care of the 4 issues that I had with this application. The biggest one, well, the biggest 2 were the tree preservation and the design issues that I had. So that's where they are. And there's new drawings and new conditions that take care of all those items that I just talked about.
And just to follow on to Commissioner Carter's thing, I just wanted to reiterate a few points if I may. And if I may share my screen, Mr. Chair, like to just, hopefully everyone can see. Oh, okay. Hopefully everyone can sort of see that there.
Yes.
Okay, so I won't belabor the point, just sort of sort of how we got to where we are, but everyone knows that we took through rezoning back in 2019 for 32 acres of Isaac Newton Square, and the idea was to redevelop it with a series of 10 pedestrian-friendly development blocks, all in line with the comprehensive plan's recommendations. And we only processed the rezoning and conceptual development plan with the ownership thinking at the time that we would eventually realize the conceptual vision over time as the market conditions dictated. And with each block, you would get separate final development plans that would be filed for each block and building that would be reviewed by this body as well as the county. When we first started designing out the neighborhood, we let the open space and the comprehensive plans grid network kind of guide the layout. It wasn't driven by buildings. It was really driven by open spaces. So you see the quality, you see the grid, you see the development blocks, you see the open space, and the idea really was, how do you bring people together to socialize and interact? How do you provide a framework around the preservation of those mature willow oak trees that are supposed to be preserved, and then provide opportunities for each block to have direct access to nature in a site today that is completely paved. So we have Nature's Edge Park, which goes around the sort of the upper part of the property. We have the rain garden meander, which kind of slices through the middle of it, which is supposed to be a place for stormwater management. We have the athletic field to the bottom, and we also have a connection that we worked out with Nova Parks and the Park Authority to be able to punch through to get into the W&OD trail so people can get through Metro Rail as well. Tying all of this together, though, really was the idea of the Willow Oak Park, which is supposed to be a variable width park that's activated with nodes of public art and furniture, and of course, the preservation of the willow oaks. They are the defining feature of this development. We've identified most of them for preservation on all of our landscape plans. And in most places, we are holding the existing building zone and curb line. And in some cases, we're moving it away substantially, almost 8 feet in some cases, away from those willow oaks. As I'll mention in a second, the ownership has engaged a reputable arborist. They've been monitoring and maintaining those willow oaks for the last 2 years and stabilizing them. We have a series of proffers that seek to the preservation of those trees. Just for recollection, this is the tree preservation plan for the identification of the trees to be preserved from our rezoning and conceptual development plan. Some of you all might remember that. When we looked at how we could move forward with the first phase of the project, we really wanted to do it in a way that would establish Isaac Newton Square as a place, right, as a neighborhood. So not just one-off block here or a couple homes here or something like that. Wanted to have a catalyst project with a critical set of blocks to really create a semblance of place. And we determined that we would start at the top and then work our way down towards the Metro Rail. And so we really focused on these 4 blocks, W2, N1, N2, and N3. And, but to ready those blocks for vertical construction, and to define those blocks and to provide access, physical access to them, we realized that the private streets first had to be constructed and placed in common ownership. And then over time, vertical construction would occur in each of the blocks. And so what is before the committee this evening is an FDP to construct that first section of streets. No buildings are proposed. We are dealing with stormwater management, roads, and curbs. But these seemingly innocuous improvements are absolutely critical to accelerate the delivery of this neighborhood. I will say that looks can be deceiving here. There's a lot to it. It's not just, not just the roads, but it's critically important. When we met with you last month and followed on with discussions with staff and Commissioner Carter, we realized that there was some tweaking to do on the FDP drawings and in the conditions related to sidewalks and utility placement and more. And I'll be the first to admit, and I wasn't here last month, but I will say this. I think we did not anticipate the level of questioning at last month's P&Z meeting, especially because the utilities and that level of detail and scrutiny of, that will be determined at time of site plan and not necessarily at the FDP level. And that's really where it needs to be shown is that site plan. But we do apologize. All the things that were brought up, they're in the works now. And frankly, some of the comments that we received from this group, I think really caused us to stop and pause and think and rework our approach. So what I wanted to do is just highlight 3 additional points that Commissioner Carter had alluded to. The first question or one of the big things that came up last time, there may have been a misunderstanding about whether the proposed FDP aligns with the approved CDP. It was approved by both the Board of Supervisors and by this committee. So to confirm, the proposed road and infrastructure improvements that are shown here are consistent with that was shown on the approved CDP insofar as it relates to the trees, the curb cuts, the driveway, and everything like that. So we're basically incorporating what was approved previously. What is shown here in green is the existing, not what was approved under the CDP, but the existing, the existing parking lot. What is shown in pink or purple, depending on what your screen shows, that is both the approved CDP and the proposed FDP. There is no difference at all. Those lines are coterminous. There is one small curb alignment or a small deviation in the curb return by Wheelie Avenue. But if you're looking for a deviation between the CDP and the FDP that's proposed, there really is none. We're also pulling back, and I think you can see it on the western side as you approach Isaac Newton Square West on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see that we are pulling back almost to 8 feet or so the curb away from the existing curb line, which is shown in green, and that's what's meant to be shown there. Pete Crawford is our civil engineer with Urban. Pete, are you on the phone by any chance? Are you on?
I'm here, Andrew. Yep.
Did I summarize that succinctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just to reiterate the main points of this exhibit, it's really to show that the proposed curb is no closer than the existing curb to the Willow Oaks. And I know Andrew mentioned 8 feet. It's actually 10 feet we're pulling it south on that western edge.
Okay.
And also just to reiterate, the FDP curb alignment is identical to the CDP, except for a small 6-inch difference on the northern curb at Wheelie Avenue. And that was just done in coordination with VDOT and the FDP. So it's essentially a copy and paste from the CDP alignment over to the FDP alignment.
Okay, thank you, Pete. The second point that I wanted to talk about, and it's critically important, is tree preservation. Commissioner Carter had started talking about it, but obviously, as we mentioned, a significant feature of the rezoning plan and a lot of justification for it was based on the preservation of the mature willow oak trees and their inclusion in our landscaping and open space plans for future development. We all agree that the willow oaks are a major asset of the project. They're important to take care of. In fact, the ownership, Peter Lawrence Companies, actually developed those 2 office buildings along Wheelie Avenue, opposite the Taco Bell and the McDonald's. And they did not lose a single willow oak tree along Isaac Newton Square East, which is where my cursor is here. And it's really for this reason that the rezoning included a fairly lengthy commitments for the preservation of those, and that we called them out on our CDP. Since appearing before you last month, we've made some changes, and we wanted to provide some clarifying points. First, to confirm, we have, in fact, been working with an arborist, which is the Care of Trees, which is affiliated with the Davy Tree Company for the last 2 years. Davy has been monitoring and maintaining those willow oaks. They've been preparing those trees for construction to make sure they can weather them to the degree possible. They've selectively pruned dead branches and used other techniques. And we're going to be working with them in the future to assess, using radar and other types of things to assess their critical root zones. And in terms of how we're going to preserve them, that's really the level of detail that we're working on. We know most certainly it will involve urban forestry and park authority staff, but that will also be addressed in greater detail at time of site plan. But I wanted to let you know that we are taking that seriously and we have engaged with the arborist. The second thing that we did was that we removed a note on sheet C17, which provided the authority for the applicant to remove trees almost indiscriminately. That's an offensive note. It has been removed. The third thing that we did was that we worked with staff to craft 2 development conditions that Commissioner Carter had mentioned, one of which reiterates and carries forward the tree preservation commitments that we made in our proffers. And the other one deals with the placement of utilities in relation to the willow oaks, which I'll talk about in a second. And the last thing on this point, as far as tree preservation, there may have been a misunderstanding as well, and I apologize, about who has been working on the tree preservation aspects of the plan and our commitment to the trees. And I wanted to clarify that for the record, we have had a landscape architect and arborist involved from the beginning, from early 2018, before we even filed our application on this. We know that our project engineer, Pete Crawford, who you just heard from, stamped the actual plans. The plans that are before you tonight have added the arborist certification to the plan because we wanted to more correctly and accurately convey who has been involved in the preparation and review of these plans. Our landscape and arborist is a guy named Kevin Tankersley, who is here this evening. Kevin is an ISA certified arborist and landscape architect. He's been practicing for the last 35 years. He's worked on many projects in Reston, but he himself has been here since February of 2018. I wanted to invite him, if he's available, to walk you through the FDP. We saw the trees that were identified for preservation under the CDP. I wanted him to walk you through how we're dealing with it at the FDP. So, Kevin, are you available by any chance?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Andrew. Again, my name's Kevin Tankersley, and as Andrew said, I am an ISA certified arborist and landscape architect, and practiced for a long time. Some of my very earliest projects were actually in Reston, including a section of Reston called North Hills, and that was just starting out. And we worked there to save a lot of trees. I've got fairly extensive experience in Fairfax County with tree preservation plans, and have been involved in a number of, more recently in urban situations. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges I've been involved with lately was the actual moving of a 36-inch caliper sweet gum in a development in Washington, D.C. So I do have some experience there. And all through this project, Urban's arborists, myself and a couple of my colleagues at Urban who are certified arborists have been involved with the preparation of the various plans for this development. These trees are important, and our clients reached out to us in February of 2018 before they even had begun preparing plans, and I actually consulted with them on the willow oak trees at that point and recommended a program of extra care for them in advance of any development happening, that to include watering, fertilization, and pruning. And then based upon that recommendation, as you heard, that they hired care of trees to begin care for these trees, and work has been done on them over the last 2 years in preparation for the development. We have Urban's arborists have provided input and on the plans and recommended changes in grading and utility routings and a number of issues to better preserve these willow oak trees over the process of preparing the plans. And one of the things that you're seeing here on the screen, you'll see our plans show the critical root zones, which are done in the normal fashion according to industry practices, which are circles, but 1 foot per inch of tree diameter at breast height. However, we do know from the science that due to lack of water and air and compaction, there are always far fewer roots under the roads in terms of the feeder roots that are the really critical roots for the health and life of the tree. So part of the advice has always been that in terms of the road, that it be rebuilt in place or moved back, and that is exactly what the plan has been doing. Another thing to point out, in the area where we're moving the road away, that's the place where the curb is actually against the trunk of the trees now, and that's something that really needs to be corrected anyway if we want to see those trees survive. And so if the curb were left there, it would harm the tree by at least that side of those trees by girdling it and may cause damage to them. So moving the curb, though it invites a little bit of risk, as any surgery does, we feel that will be good for the health and long term on the trees. We understand it's going to be a delicate operation. It's going to require a lot of handwork, and that's something that the tree preservation plan will get into. If we could have the next slide, Andrew, please. So in terms of some of the things that were looked at and are being done to minimize disturbance to the trees, in terms of this plan, for instance, here on the first segment from Wheelie Avenue to Isaac Newton Square East, we are going to leave in place the existing pavement and leave, not have any disturbance there at this first outside, at the outset of work here. The next area along Isaac Newton Square North between the east and center streets, we have pulled the limits back, and they're down the slope. They're approximately 45 feet away from the trees. And our next slide, Andrew, please. And then moving along from along Center Street to Isaac Newton Square West, that's the area where we are, as I mentioned, pulling the curb away on the street side, which will open up more rooting area on that side. We do have retaining wall on the north side of the trees, so the limits of clearing is only approximately 25 feet, but that retaining wall is, of course, containing the roots of those trees. They don't go any further than that, I'm pretty sure. And then along Isaac Newton Square West, we've also pushed the limits back to approximately 35 feet. And then, Andrew, if we could have the next slide, please. So we have a lot of work to do. We are, as Andrew mentioned, we are getting into the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty of preparing a tree preservation plan for the public improvement plan that will be eventually submitted. Our proffers require us to prepare that. It's going to have to be a very detailed plan because there is a lot here. This is a very complex project. And in order to help with that, the applicant has brought on a second arborist, and Carrie Halsey with Davy Tree, who also has significant experience and especially has experience in dealing with mature trees like this in delicate situations. Davy is going to be doing some ground penetrating radar to help us trace the critical root zones better for the existing trees. We obviously haven't gotten that work done yet, but that will help inform the plan and give us clues as to areas that we really need to pay extra special attention to. In addition, we are continuing to work on care programs for these trees leading up to construction. This is stuff that will not be part of the actual construction plan because it's going to happen before then, to again make sure these trees are in the best condition going into construction. A tree that's stressed doesn't survive construction very well, so we want to make sure these are in good health. And then going through the construction program, we will have an intensive monitoring program with an arborist on site when there's construction work happening in the vicinity of the trees, and then ongoing to monitor them all the way through the end of construction. So we realize we are making a big commitment, as has been requested of us, and we'll be preparing a very detailed plan.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And then to conclude, Mr. Chair, I wanted to say the third area, it was about wet and dry utilities. Even though dry utilities are not shown at the FDP because that level of detail is typically shown at site plan and not here, we have been working with the dry utility consultants. We are working on a utility plan that really emphasizes the importance of the willow oak trees, and we are seeking to locate those utilities as far away from the trees as possible. And also to make sure that all of the parties are aligned as we move forward towards the site plan and the PI plan. We have facilitated discussions with our arborists and with Fairfax Water. And then the last thing I'll say about this issue, and this is what Commissioner Carter brought up, we have reiterated our development approach to state that all new wet and dry utilities have to be located in the street or on the opposite side of the roadbed from the willow oaks to be preserved, and that they will not have an effect on the proffered streetscape elements. So I think we've come a long way since last month. I think we've taken the comments that we received to heart. Frederick Rothmeyer, I don't know if you want to close out from ownership's perspective, but I would just say again, we've worked with staff to address all of staff's issues. They do recommend approval. We appreciate the input that you all have provided, and I think it's clearly made the project better, but we've taken those comments to heart. So with that, Fred, I don't know if you want to say anything at all, or that's it.
Yeah, I think Andrew made the right statement, you know, we understand and we fully embrace the willow oaks. They are assets to it. That's our plan is built around it. But I guess we got a little flat-footed in the last presentation because we're just not at that level of detail. But as Andrew said, we have been, you know, moving quicker into that to make sure that any utility that we're putting in here is as far away and that construction methods that we will use absolutely minimize any impact to these willow oaks. So we're fully committed. The conditions and proffers basically, you know, allude to all that. So I hope you will, you know, take that to heart, and we are looking forward to progressing this and then coming in with the 4 building blocks and working all together with you all to make this a big success.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I think that concludes our presentation, and I'm happy to receive any comments and would appreciate a recommendation vote this evening.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, that was a nice presentation. I think that really touched upon a lot of the comments that I think we heard from the last meeting. So let's start off. Let me just go down the list, and you know, if all of you have comments, certainly make the comments. If you agree with some of your colleagues, you could say that as well, and we'll kind of keep notes, and then we'll eventually be taking a motion for a vote at the end of the comment period. We'll let Commissioner Carter or anybody from the public speak as well at the end. So on my list, I have Bill Penniman starting us off.
My only comment is I really appreciate the fact that you guys are taking these issues seriously. You're obviously taking it seriously in terms of the details of the plans, the anticipation of issues down the road by hiring arborists early in the process, working with staff and Commissioner Carter. And so thank you. And also thanks to Elizabeth Baker, who I thought actually did a pretty good job last time. Even they may have been surprised by some of the questions, but in any event, but no, thank you. You've answered any questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Then the other William, Mr. Pegues.
Only 2 things. One is that I really wished you guys would, it's not part of this particular presentation here, but would look at vegetated roofing systems. This can cut down on your actual costs for insulation and heating and other environmentally internal prices. And you know, it even assists in the filtration of the water itself that goes into the stormwater system. The other thing is that, as I mentioned the last time, and I haven't been by the property in a couple of weeks, so I don't know if anything's been done about it, but you have an active dump on your site. The Environmental Advisory Committee has, and Reston staff has sent out people to look at the area and has determined that it is actually on the property, not on Reston land area that or any other thing. And it is located just over the crest of the hill where there is a dumpster. People are throwing washing machines, dryers, dishwashers, mattresses, whole beds, minor furniture down that hillside. And you can see it when you're driving, I get south on Wheelie Avenue. As you approach the area, you can see it from there. So it'd be really nice, since, you know, the property is under your working sort of environment now, you might simply help out and clean that up. It'd be really nice. Otherwise, basically, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for those comments. And again, as you know, I mean, there's no buildings proposed here, but I think that's something we can look at in the future when the actual vertical construction comes online.
Right.
Fred, I don't know if you want to speak to anything with respect to cleanliness on the property or anything. Obviously, there's going to be demolitions.
Yeah, we'll look into it. It hadn't come to my attention, but we'll talk to ownership and make sure that we understand what's going on.
Right. It's like in this particular slide that's up on the screen, where it says future building area, and then it has, right, almost exactly where your cursor is,
Right there.
just
Okay.
above the word pavement.
Got it.
Just that down slope, just before you get to the property line, which is at the bottom of the hill, is the slope going down the side of the hill right there. That's a very active dump site.
Got it. We'll look into it. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, William. Tammy.
Thank you. Kevin, on the tree save, or you've been looking after these trees in anticipation of the importance of saving them for this project. And I dare say all of us on this committee are frantic that every single tree gets the best possible opportunity to be saved, because they're such an unusual thing, and they will make your project so different from any other project in Reston. So having said that, this final plan is for the street only and the utilities under the street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anticipating that you're going to have, this is an east-west row of trees that you're caring for, and in the future, you're going to have tall buildings shielding them from the sun. That doesn't apply to this final plan, but it sure does apply to what you plan in the future and how dense this property is going to be. And I will tell you, I will be very concerned about these trees being shaded that have never been shaded in their lives before. So that's a little extra. Be careful of that coming up. The utilities are being moved away from the north side of the street on the east-west street. Is that correct? You were talking about dry and wet. They have to be separated from one another, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, like
The
go ahead.
the utilities are being generally speaking, how things are set up mostly through the county is the wet utilities usually run under the street, and then the dry utilities run on the sides. So they are separate from, and in this case, we are putting all of the dry utilities, any new dry utilities, to the opposite side of the street from the Willow Oaks.
Okay, so are the wet utilities going in the center of the street?
They are going.
Are you saying the dry utilities will not be under the street, but they will be south of the street?
The dry utilities will generally be south of the street. The wet utilities are biased as much as we can to the south of the street, but there are separations and clearances that have to be maintained as well between them.
Right.
We can't just put them all in one little trench.
Correct. Slot. And that's obvious. The curbs that are being removed that are directly adjacent to the trunks, that scares me. And you had made one statement that will be hand work. Yeah, how hand? I've been on construction sites.
By hand, with perhaps, at most it would be a handheld jackhammer. But there may be a case where we have to leave a few pieces. It's like the person who has a piece of shrapnel that gets left in there. So, that's going to have to be a very detailed look, tree by tree by tree by tree. And we have not done that look yet.
And I appreciate that you are aware that it is such an important and individual situation, but is there going to be somebody, I know you say to us white collar people, yes, I will be on site, but construction takes place early in the morning and depending on schedules, it can extend later. It's just one guy getting on a backhoe and rolling over these roots and compacting can really adversely affect the trees. So you know,
So there will be tree protection fence put up. And the construction is supposed to occur in the work in adjacent these trees in the critical root zone is to occur only when there is an arborist on site to supervise.
okay, that's excellent. When do you anticipate construction actually starting on this?
That's going to be subject to when we get all of the plans approved and permits in place, and perhaps Fred can speak to
Probably
more
mid
as to what the
next year,
schedule is.
Tammy.
Pardon me?
Mid next year,
Okay, mid 22.
correct. So somewhere around there, you know, May,
all right,
May, June.
All right. And the you had stated before on a previous presentation, not for the streets, but on the plan in general, that there were going to be wooden boardwalks around the trees to prevent compaction of roots, but not a word has been said about that in our last two meetings. Is that still in your plans, these wooden boardwalks?
Those are part of this CDP, but they will be part of the FDPs of the blocks because
Okay, that's when we'll see those
so
again.
it will all come back to you, and the reason for the boardwalks in the Willow Oak zone at that point in time, and again we worked with Kevin Tankersley who just spoke about that too, is that they can be on sleepers and only, you know, on spots that we know could be penetrating in the ground. You know, we would pin them back down, but otherwise they basically would float over the root zones.
Okay, so that's where your ground penetrating radar will come in handy. Thank you
Yes.
so much. I appreciate this level of detail. Next. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy. Rebecca.
Hey guys, I love going after Tammy. So I am good. I appreciate you taking the time to address all our concerns and comments. I think you did a good job. So nothing more from me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Actually, I'll give some people better warning here. We'll go from Mike Jennings to Michelle and then Matt. So Mike?
Yes, I echo Mr. Penniman's comments exactly. I have nothing more to add. They capture my same thoughts. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Michelle?
I'm good too. Thank you very much for addressing our concerns.
Certainly.
And then Matt.
Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the meeting last month, so I didn't get to hear the initial discussion, but I thought the presentation tonight was extremely detailed, and it sounds like everybody's doing their due diligence to really acknowledge and protect these trees. So I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, now let's try, we'll go to Katie, then John Kay, and then Shelley. So Katie?
I have no comments, nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
You talking about me?
No, John.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to Shelley.
Nothing from me except hi, Andrew.
Hey, Shelley. How are you? I enjoy your book, by the way. It's very, I enjoy your book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm signed up.
yeah, get some coffee.
Okay, no.
All right, now we're going to move on to David, and if Sue's with David, we'll go to Sue after David.
Hey, Rob, this is John. Can you hear me?
John, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
I don't know what's going on with my computer. It works all day until this meeting pops up. No, just great presentation. I don't have any further comments.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks. All right, David.
Okay, thanks, Rob. A couple things. First of all, I'd like to second Mr. Pagay's suggestion for the roofing on these buildings when you get around to building them. It sounds like an excellent idea and energy efficient. What is your review for me again the commitment for the recreational amenities? I know you have a sports field down in the bottom center of that. Dimensions of that are what?
You know, I have to take a look at those proffers again, but it's a full-size adult athletic field.
Okay. And then you've got some amenities up at the very peak of the
We do, yeah. So the main amenities that are up at the top, if you're living in this northern part, is one is going to be the, and I'll go back to my presentation. So one is going to be the Nature's Edge Park, which is in this area around here, and it's sort of wrapped around all of this whole area here. And so that'll be pathways, floating decks, that sort of thing. In this area here, there is going to be a small tot lot, playground, that sort of thing. And we purposely located it here to take advantage of the views of Hidden Creek Golf Course over here. And then in the northern part here, we've got an option for sort of a small court or dog walk area up here. And then you can see the Willow Oak Park here, which is going to be sort of around the sort of the vicinity of the site. Midway through the site is sort of slashing through these blocks is what we are calling the rain garden meander. And the idea is that the buildings on those would direct their some of their storm water into that area, and that can be an educational type facility. And then down at the very bottom, this is where we don't have much retail on the site, but this is kind of where we're hoping to have retail and some commercial uses, sort of Main Street Village kind of feel. But this is where we've located the full-size athletic field. And so it has the athletic field, it has a warm-up field here to the west of it, and then it's got bathrooms, sort of an amphitheater seating, and sort of a main plaza area along here as well. It's
pavilion is there, and in the meander there's also a sort of a little community, grass green area. I don't think we brought all the renderings of the different places, but that's there too. So it's not just rain garden, but it's pathways and seating areas and communal areas, gathering space.
And it's your opinion that that is for the number of residents, the number of people who will be living on this site, that is sufficient for at least partial need, right? For recreation.
Yeah, and these are the publicly accessible open spaces that are open to residents and the public. So each block, each building, these multifamily buildings, we kind of shaded in a couple of small courtyards, but each building is going to have, like any apartment building would, their own community amenity space, their own rooftop areas, their own workstations, their own everything else as well.
Okay. Okay. And given the fact that the trees that we're trying to preserve are living things, and that it's hard to predict exactly what will happen, I guess his name is Tankersley, the arborist. Do you have an estimate? Do you have a history of knowing what percentage in a property like this, in a situation like this, what percentage of those trees may not survive this building?
That is always a very difficult thing to predict, but we do have the track record of the trees along the eastern side at the office buildings where we didn't lose a one, and usually it relates to the amount of care and attention that's given to them as to whether they survive or not. And right now these trees are getting a whole lot of attention, so I think we have a very high chance of them surviving.
Okay. And lastly, Andrew, are you committing to these people being part of RA?
Yeah, there is a proffered commitment to negotiate in good faith with RA to join and to seek joinder of that. So, and we're not there yet, obviously, because we haven't. We're working with developers on those 3 blocks that I mentioned, and as part of that, they will, they and we all in conjunction, we're all going to have a conversation with RA on that. But that's the commitment that we made.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. And Sue is not here, so
Okay.
I just passed along some of her comments.
Okay, excellent. The last person is me on the list, and then we want to go to John Carter. I just wanted to say, unless I missed somebody, I'm just trying to recheck my list here. No, I appreciate what the applicant has done and the sensitivity to the trees. Certainly, that was a comment that I was concerned about as well. Kevin, my one question to you is just about I know the utilities generally have to be in the roads and everything, and the question was, because the drip line of the existing willow trees already extends, apparently it would give you the impression that it's under the road. Do we have any concerns of the water line that's located within that so-called drip line, that itself could be a problem for those trees?
Hey, Rob and Kevin, go ahead and talk, and then I want to jump in here as well.
Okay. Well, as I said, the science that we know out there is generally because of compaction, because of a lessened amount of oxygen and a lessened amount of water getting through pavements. The feeder roots that are critical for the survival of the trees generally don't extend as much under pavements, and they're usually blocked by things like curb and so forth. There may be some structural roots there. That's part of us looking into the radar and trying to see what's there. Obviously, we can't, we're not Supermen. We can't see ourselves. So we're going to have to use some tools to help us. And then obviously, as the work gets done, it's going to have to be, supervised and watched and very carefully, Doug, to be put in place.
And so, Rob, what I just wanted to add on to that was, just so we've had discussions with the water authority. First was, can we leave the existing water line in place? And just so everybody is aware, that was our first step towards minimizing disturbance. But because of the age of the water line, we are going to need to replace it. But we've already started discussion with them on construction techniques other than just open trenching, in case there is roots there that are unexpected based on Kevin's experience. If we go out there and we find a ton of roots, we've already started those discussions with the water authority on some alternative techniques that they are also willing to embrace, even though they're not typically used in Fairfax County. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, Kevin, Peter, thank you for that explanation. Commissioner Carter, do you have any additional thoughts?
Just one thing, Andrew, could you send me a copy of this presentation and then add the one or two slides from that I've seen for the details on the streets?
Yep.
The two side streets. You could send those.
Sure. Yep. We'll do that tonight.
And that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Jose, I'm not seeing anybody in the public or asking to have further comment. I just want to confirm that.
I have a question. This is Tammy.
Yes, ma'am.
Where on this slide, Andrew, can you please point out where the dog park is? I missed
Yeah, it's
that.
up in the upper part.
It is up in the upper part.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And Andrew, please get a hold of me. The golf course is having we're having a big powwow about the 4-acre retention basin, and your development here wants to be in on that. So get a hold of me so I can give you the information. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. We've actually been, we got got that information as well from another source, and I believe also Mr. Del Cid is going to send us some information on when the community meeting is. But Tammy, I will absolutely get in touch with you too.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy. Okay, I'm going to be recusing myself from this action tonight. Yes, is that Shelley?
It's Michelle. I'm sorry. Can I just wanted to ask a question while we have everyone here. Tammy did mention something that once the buildings are built, the shade might present a problem. Just while we have Kevin here, can you address that?
For the trees along Isaac Newton Square North, they are on the north side of the street, so they are, the building's shadows will not be as much on them. They will be much more open to it. We're going to have some adaptation for the trees, but I don't really see that the shade is going to be, that's not as much an issue as the care of the roots and the critical root zones that in order for the trees to survive. If we could have the trees in as best health that we can, I think they will adapt.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, so the applicant is here tonight for a vote. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Bill Penniman. Do I hear a second?
I
will
second.
second, William.
All right. Now, if everybody's comfortable with doing the hand or the hand raising in the chat room or the participants room, let's try that. And if you don't know where that is or you can't find that, then you can tell me verbally once we go down the list. So I guess all in favor of the motion, please add your, raise your hand in the chat. Okay, so right now I have all hands raised with the exception of myself, which I'm abstaining. Shelley, your hand's not raised, and Matt, your hand's not raised. Is that accurate?
I'm trying to figure out how to do it, but I'm in agreement. I'm
okay.
raising my hand.
Okay. So Shelley, that would leave the only non-raised
No,
hand.
me too. I raised my hand.
Okay, so that's unanimous except for me that I'm abstaining. So that motion carries.
All right.
Congratulations to the applicant. Thank you again for working with Commissioner Carter and working with us. I think we really appreciate your efforts and your team's efforts. And, this has always been an exciting project, I think, for the community, the way it's being preserved, the tree save. We all want this to be a success. And I think you all have proved tonight you feel the same way. And you always have, quite frankly, but we really look forward to it.
Thanks, Rob. And thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
How many people voted, Rob? I'm just curious.
So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 11 voted for approval and 1 abstained.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll go on to the next application. All right, let me get my notes together here. Okay, so the second application is the Haley Rise Block C final development plan. So again, another final development plan. This is here for a vote. I believe we have both David Gill here tonight, and I heard Jay Johnson was also on the line earlier. So David, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Rob, and appreciate that introduction and appreciate being able to take your time with you here tonight to answer some of the questions we heard last month and bring you up to speed. And just by way of background in terms of where we are in the process, again, this is an FDP for Block C in the Haley Rise development. I represent a partnership between Ackridge and Meridian Group, and Jay Johnson's here on behalf of that partnership, who is developing Block C under contract with Brookfield itself. We're very excited about bringing this project forward, and you guys had asked a number of, frankly, pretty good questions last time. And I just wanted to go through and make sure we've been able to answer all of those questions and respond appropriately to what you had raised. In addition, we've been working with Katie Quinn at staff. We talked with her just this morning. She has a draft staff report that's not quite ready for prime time, but all indications from her, she's ready to issue a positive staff report. We are on the calendar for November 17th, so there is potentially some time to answer any last minute questions if there are any. But our hope is that after tonight, we've answered them for you and you guys can feel comfortable moving forward with this particular application. And I'll just go ahead and bring up the presentation again that we talked about with you last time with some additional details of the questions we can answer. Again, this is Block C. So in this view, it is this block that we're talking about here. To the south would be the existing Fannie Mae office building. East is Reston Parkway. To the north is where the Wegmans that is currently under construction and is nearing completion is at right now. Just zooming in again, we were talking about two buildings, two residential buildings, and go through that as we show it to you. But the key to it was that we had brought the existing office, the existing parking structure that was designed to serve the office off-site into the building itself and fully wrapped it. That's a pretty significant change from where we were with the CDP and committed to this design with the FDP. This building on the east is intended to be a rental building. Right now, we're anticipating this building would be ownership on the west, but you never know how the market actually turns out in 2 years from now. I'd also point out here to the west of that, this building here is the CLT office building. And I think Commissioner Carter wanted me to highlight that last time. That is actually a building which is called cross-laminated timber. It's a wooden structure for an office building. And the big advantages of a CLT building is that it allows for better carbon sequestration because it's actually captured in the wood rather than the carbon that you need to make steel, make concrete. And estimates for, and Bill Benham probably know this better than me, but I think estimates are roughly, just in construction alone, are responsible for 10% of carbon emissions worldwide. So the ability under the new building codes to do CLT buildings, so above 4 stories, is a really exciting improvement. And it's a credit to Brookfield that they're willing to commit to do that for that office building. I think that's a green feature that you asked me to touch a little bit on, Commissioner Carter. Just going through it a little bit more, we had a couple of questions here about the pictures here. I think you raised that, Tammy. Talking with our landscape architect, these represent 3 to 5 years after planting. All of the trees planted will be either 3 to 5 inches in caliper when planted, and as shown here, they're 3 to 5 inches. In the plan itself, they are shown with the 10-year canopy as required by the ordinance. But I want to make sure everyone understood what the graphics were when they were looking at this. This again, different street views. I'm happy to spend any amount of time on these different views, but none of these have changed from the last time we presented to you. This is looking from the park northeast. So Wegmans would be in the far background here. And we've got more detail on some of the surrounding parks. I think it was a question we had heard is where are the parks in relation to these residences? And I've got some slides further on to talk specifically about those. Again, how the frontages work, how it works with the street as it goes down with the grade. Up to the left-hand side of the picture is Reston Parkway right there, and it would fall down, as you can see, almost, frankly, 2 stories, 20 feet as you come down to this corner. Wegmans would be across the street in this location, but again, we're anchoring with retail, trying to activate this street frontage as much as possible and make it as pedestrian friendly. Again, that view a little further back. This is what the facade would look like from the Wegmans side. And then this is the Reston Parkway frontage, I think there was always some concern about and questions about. One of the questions we had heard was the type and species of trees. The proffer commits us to use native species to the maximum extent practicable, and we're absolutely supportive of that. I don't think we can commit to 100% native just because there are some better climate adapted non-native species, but we're 100% committed to trying to use natives where we can, and absolutely no invasive species, obviously. We are not anticipating river birch here. I think there was a question about that, largely because our understanding is that doesn't comply with some of the Reston streetscape standards, and working with our landscape architect, that's what we have been targeting here. I'd also use this chance to talk a little bit about the raised plaza that's basically a story up between the 2 residential buildings. there were a couple of questions there about the amount of the green roof we're talking about. And working back through our team, it looks like we could commit to about 4,000 square feet or 15% of that as green roof. And we're excited about that. That goes above and beyond any commitments in the proffers currently, or that were frankly done on the FDPs for the other blocks. So we're excited about being able to make that commitment. We really sharpen our pencils and see what we could do with that area. I'm just going to hop through. Apologize. This would be the view from Reston Parkway as you go down the hill. Again, trying to articulate that building using high quality materials, inset courtyards, and really break up how that building works. Again, this previously was an exposed parking garage, and we worked very hard to try and reduce that imprint on this side. On the interior here on row D shows the time and effort on how to make this entrance into the garage work to make it more pedestrian friendly. We have a shared loading space right here near the entrance to our one of the two residential buildings, as well as to the office buildings further. This shows that sort of courtyard where you do that turnaround movement here on row D. This is the larger streetscape step back. Just again, on the left is what was approved with the CDB FDP and where the parking garage was shown. And then on the right is the changes that we're proposing here with our implementation of it. Again, the density, use, FAR, none of that is changing with this application. It is the implementation exercise of what was already approved with the CDB FDP. We had several questions about how the parks work. And so we went back with Brookfield and they wanted to give us the update. Directly across the street to the south and to the west of the existing Fannie Mae building would be a Haley Rice dog park right there. So our residents will be able to come down, walk across the street, use this dog park, and then walk over and across. And both of these open spaces are under construction now and will definitely be open before our buildings are complete. This is the center master open space lawn area, multi-use, picnics, throwing the frisbee, things like that. To the south, I think this was a question that we'd heard, is where can the kids go play? That would be this play area right here, where we've got a variety of play structures to appeal to a variety of ages. And then directly to the north of that is a potential volleyball area court. Not a potential, that will be the volleyball and active recreational component as well. And even further west, there is a second dog park here that our residents will be able to use as well to really get some of those open space questions. So that's just a review of where we're at. There were a couple other specific questions that I want to touch base on. Bill, you had a couple of questions on EV and how we're tackling that. The proffer itself only called for providing 2% of spaces as EV, quote unquote, ready. And we heard you loud and clear. And I think even from when the proffers were initially approved, the EV market has even matured more substantially. So we actually do want to put in at least those 2% of units, and frankly, a few more. 2%, strictly speaking, would only be 17 EV spaces. That didn't really work out with how the bays lay out. So we're committing to a full 20 spaces as EV, and not even as EV ready, as EV straight up. In addition, we are going to try and incorporate additional conduit for expansion of those parking spaces in the future, if and when the demand was needed to provide those EV spaces. So, we're excited about that. We're excited about appealing to those type of residents. And Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is we're not assigning these spaces to any particular unit. So they will be open so anybody can charge who lives in the community, and will be able to charge their car and have an EV vehicle available.
That's correct, yes.
In addition, Bill, I think you'd raised a pretty good point about looking at electric appliances across the board. And, we took a look at some of the information you sent over, and we think you're right. So we are going to be doing electrical appliances across the board in both buildings. So we thought that made a lot of sense. We removed, I think, a sidewalk that we had shown earlier that was no longer being done across Reston Parkway, just to be 100% clear on how that was going to occur. Those were the sort of key questions that we had as part of this application, but I know it's a complicated application with a lot of moving parts. And so Jay, if there's anything else you wanted to add. Otherwise, we're here to answer your questions and make you feel comfortable about the direction this application is headed in.
No, thanks, David. I have nothing further. Look forward to hearing what your questions are.
All right, thanks, David and Jay. Well, let's just jump right into the committee. I'm going to go backwards this time. Let's go David Vanel, Shelley, and then John Capillo.
Thanks, Rob. I've got no particular questions. I think the parties have answered mine.
Great, thanks, David. Shelley.
Well, I echo that. I actually missed your presentation at the prior meeting, so I'm not sure I can even gauge what's changed from then to now, but I have no questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. John Capillo.
Hello. Thanks, David, for the presentation. I still have a little bit of a concern about any trees that they plant along Reston Parkway. I don't know, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen anything that kills that. Definitely want to avoid planting the quarter-inch caliper that was done on some of the projects along Reston Parkway that's going to take,
Yeah, Rob, if I heard the question correctly, it was about the trees on the parkway.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, we spent a lot of time, and David can jump in here too with additional color. There was a rather prescriptive 2 or 3 tree pattern along the Reston Parkway. We actually had a gas line that at one time was going to be located to the west of that trail you see. It was causing so much trouble with the proffered treescape along the parkway that the action was moved internal to the site at considerable cost on the north-south spine road to the west of Road A. I will say that it complies completely with the CDP required plantings. There's additional lower, ground story plantings that have been added to supplement that. David, you want to add anything, or I just know that it's the staff is well pleased with what we've done, and actually we've taken extra steps to make it a little nicer, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and Pete Crawford, if you're available as well, Pete actually serves as the engineer for this project as well, and can add some additional color to the time and effort that went in to make sure that what we're presenting here, frankly, is not only matches what was done to the Wegmans to the north, but improves on it in some ways. I think one of the things that staff wanted to see here was making sure we don't have just standalone trees and that the understory really works with the treescape presented. So that's where a lot of our focus was on, John, is to make it more natural, so it is more of a true Reston look rather than maybe fields of grass with individual trees.
Yeah, that's great, David, and I think we also appreciate that. Probably my biggest concern is the caliper of the tree. In addition to what you're doing here, one of our landscape architects can weigh in on that. Some of the trees that have been planted along Reston Parkway have been so small, it's almost ridiculous. So.
Yeah, no, I understand the concern, John. I think we're rowing in the same direction there. I mean, this is our front door in a lot of ways, and those units need to have an effective screening and rest and feel to them. That's our goal, is to provide the largest caliber tree we can that meets the county's requirements in terms of spacing and making sure the double road has the highest chance for survival and thriving.
Thank you. Love to hear some specifics too on that.
Sure.
All right, thanks, John. John, by the way, you're just a little hard to hear, so next time. All right, let's go to Katie, then Matt, then Michelle.
Hey, thanks. So I couldn't really hear everything John was saying, but I'm really going to have the same comment I had last time, that on the pictures, the trees look really great and tall, but I'm wondering what is really being planted? Like, how tall are the trees that are really going to go in there? Because these look like, you know, a decade or longer down the road, or is that really what you're planting?
So great question, Katie. No, they are not what exactly on day one, they will not look like that, 100%. This is, in talking with our landscape, projecting forward roughly 3 to 5 years worth of growth, depending on which type of tree and the caliber that we need to do to have it be effective when it's initially planted. Jay, is that correct based on our discussions with the landscape architect?
Yes, so the renderings, he said, were in the 3 to 5 year growth range for presentation purposes. But when we look at the plan sets as required by the county, that's the 10-year canopy. And I'm 100% certain that the minimum caliper for planting is 3 inches. That's the minimum. And then as others can chime in, Rob, you know this, you have to bond these, you have to ensure that they grow, they have to replace them, and takes a pretty good a deal of effort to get these released from surety to make sure that they have taken hold and they're going to grow properly. Well, hopefully that answers your question.
It does. My only comment, I know you said minimum is 3 inches. Just, you know, as Reston Parkway is a very, you know, traveled road, I would think the residents or whoever is there would want something maybe a little bit more substantial. So I'm hoping you all do more than the 3-inch minimum. That's just my comment.
No,
Thank you.
that's a great point, and certainly take advice.
Totally agree with that comment. Thank you.
That we heard, John. All right. Katie, if that was it, I'll go to Matt.
Thank you. I appreciated the presentation. As Shelley mentioned earlier, I also was not here for the last one, so it's hard for me to know what's changed, but it seemed thorough, and I think you've answered some of the questions that I had already based on the emails that were floating back and forth. So I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you, Matt. Michelle.
Thanks. Last time I think we also talked about the free flow of traffic from Reston Parkway. Has anything changed there? Have you looked into that further? I think there's just the concern of the conflict that could present from pedestrians walking up this new path or down Reston Parkway and the cars coming in and out of the property.
On Road A, Michelle, that's the primary concern, right? On this north one, that was, I think, the bigger concern as you come off the off ramp, and come in to go to the Wegmans.
Yeah, it's Road A. Yeah, Road A.
Yep. Yeah, and I wish Mark was here because he's the true expert on that commitment. Unfortunately, the subject of the FDP is really limited to basically the curb line and in. There's a separate PI plan for that, and he's got the better details. Pete, I hate to put you on the spot here, Pete Crawford, but do you happen to have any additional information on that? Because I do remember we did raise that, Michelle. We did take out what we were previously showing, which was a crosswalk here, because that is not our understanding that VDOT does not support that across the parkway in that location. But as to that right-hand turn movement, I'm not sure exactly how that plays out.
Right. So I'll jump in here to the extent I can. So, like David said, on the previous graphic from last month's presentation, there was a crosswalk shown. That was actually just a carryover from the CDP because there was a commitment for the owner to pursue that. Since the CDP was approved, that was pursued and nixed by VDOT. However, it still showed up on some of the background graphics because, as David pointed out, this plan really is from the curb in. And so everything from the curb out is not being updated or changed because it's outside the area of the application. But I guess as far as the free flow right in, it is the condition today. It's going to be the condition in the future as well. And so right now, I have not currently heard of any issues of pedestrians across that intersection. And so that condition is going to proceed in the future.
And I will say, Michelle, I think one of the reasons we did spend a long time about trying to activate the north side of our building as much as we could was so that as folks, if they do make that move, would come down our frontage and into the site. Because if you go down this road A, you end up at Metro, and if you come down road A and immediately go here, you end up at the Wegmans. And to really sort of discourage having to cross road A at this location. But we we hear you on the point.
Yeah, and it's not just the folks in your building, it's all of
Sure.
South Reston.
Right.
I'm
Right.
yeah. Okay,
And-
I'm still I'm still concerned, especially, I mean, I recognize that it might not appear to be an issue right now, but as this comes on board and there's more cars going in and out and potentially more foot traffic too, it just seems concerning that there would be a conflict and how do you handle that?
Right.
But
And if they do come from South Reston, our hope is, I'm jetting out to the larger picture, is there is this path here that would draw you in. So if you're headed to the Metro, it would draw you up here or up here and internal to get to the Wegmans on this side. But you're right. I mean, there will be more people around, period. And, if you're, one of these office condos, how do you get over to the Wegmans is still, I think you're coming to this corner and then going up and in like that. So I think your concern is valid one that way.
and then additionally, so the park that is, or that little green space right there across the street and to the southwest, that's a dog park now? Or
This is a dog park where I've got the blue square. Yeah.
Let me jump in here, David, because I
Yeah.
think there was a bit of a confusion on the presentation. Directly south of Block C is actually a fitness park. The dog
apologies.
park, the dog park is on the west side, just to the west of the existing office. Yep, that's the dog park, and then the one that was previously highlighted is a fitness park. And both of those are actually built right now, so anybody can go out there and sort of check it out and see what's going on. They look great.
Okay, just one dog park over there in the corner and then next to the offices. Okay. Got it.
Apologize for the confusion.
Okay. I mean, I recognize this is a little bit outside of this specific application in front of us, but just thinking of the whole project, it is still those, attempting to amenitize the retention ponds, I think just does present some problems because it is such a steep slope down. So I just hope that there's a lot of focus on safety, especially if you're putting the children's play area, pretty close to that. And then possibly also if there's a way to provide some trees or something, or some more greenery by the dog park. I mean, I would hate to be, in a conference room in that office and look out and just see a whole bunch of dogs, or dogs, that's where they're going to poop. So it's not necessarily what you'd want to see in a meeting. So to the extent that you can consider that, at least when I drove by, it seemed a little bare. That would be my recommendation. And then again, just a focus on with the playground, especially focusing on safety. Thank you.
We'll pass those concerns along to Brookfield and see if they can tweak that up as they bring in FDPs in the future.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, the next three are Mike Jennings, Rebecca, and Tammy. So Mike.
I also wasn't here at the last meeting, so again, can't comment too much on changes, but the things I see tonight, I don't have any major concerns or questions.
Thank you, Mike. Rebecca?
Hey, everybody. So I'm good from the last time my comments were addressed. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Tammy?
Okay. So, one comment, I couldn't quite figure out why you were talking about the timber building when it's not your project, but since you did, I will now mention that I saw a project that is 18-story timber construction for your future edification.
No, that's a great point, Tammy, because I think they changed the building code in 2021 specifically.
Yeah, well, this isn't necessarily in this country, but that timber construction is taking off around the world. Anyway, to the photos, a couple comments. Sometimes a 3 caliper tree can be better than a 5 or 6 caliper tree in that it grows faster. However, having said that, I'm really not too thrilled with the graphics that show tall trees that are at least 4 stories, which means they're 40 feet tall in a 10-year period. That scares me a little, because are those pin oaks? We want trees that are going to last a long time. Not that I hate pin oaks, but they're fast growing, and they don't live a really long time. How many, let's see, when are you planning to build?
So
when are you planning to break ground?
Right, roughly a year from today.
Okay, so fall of 22.
Correct.
Okay. Regarding the dogs, boy, the owners better be Olympic sprinters, and the dogs better really have good muscles to hold their stuff from a big building full of residences. How many units are in the West Tower?
Jake, it's 480 total. I don't want to misspeak on that.
Approximately 120 in the West Tower and the remainder in the East Tower.
Okay, so that's a lot of dogs, and I agree that that's a far distance to get them over there. Okay, here's what really bothers me, and I really do not know if your plan is even legal, but the idea that you are going to have 120 possible purchase units of higher finishes with a lovely open park area for one set of tenants, and that's 120 units, and 360 are going to be in a Texas Donut building with no interior park space and no access to this, and possibly lower grade finishes, but that's where all the affordable or subsidized units are going to go. I don't know that that's legal. I think when you have a project, everything 120 is over 50, so you have to do the WDUs at least, and obviously the 360 is way over. So John Carter, I'd like you to look into this and see if that's even possible, that this firm can choose to have no subsidized units in one tower and put them all in the other tower, and that's the tower without the park, without the fancier finishes. I'm not sure that's even acceptable. That is not what we've been told over the years. They have to be equal. The finishes have to be equal. So, and then that you would not offer any purchase units for a WDU applicant. That seems odd to me too. So that's my comment. Thank you.
And
and one more thing. 15% of the tower to be a green roof. We're not excited about 15%. What's the matter with 85%? What is going on up there that you can't have significant green or purple roof up there?
Sure. Jay, do you want to jump in, or do you want me to
I'll be glad to chat about that. First, let me back up, Tammy. Good questions. The central amenity between the West Tower and the East Tower is actually shared. So there's a green area. There will be some private spaces to the west if the West Tower goes ownership. So let's make sure we're clear that that is a mutual accessible amenity for all residents, whether it's ownership or rental. The ordinance currently allows the for sale workforce units to be located in the rental community. That is the ordinance, and David, correct if I'm wrong, we've done that on several projects. I don't know if that's exactly how we'll work it out on this particular project. If we want to have a different distribution of units that are for ownership in the West Tower that are in the affordable range, that's not my call. But I do believe that that is perfectly acceptable by ordinance to distribute those units in the rental. So hopefully that we can provide more information if needed, but I'm 99% sure that's correct.
And
In
as
terms
important,
of
Jay,
pardon me.
we're delivering that building first as well. So all the affordable units will be delivered first because we're delivering that building first, correct?
That's correct. That's a great point. In terms of the green, the green roof, all of the stormwater quality, low impact design, green roof requirements for this particular site are voluntary. We are committing to, yes, ma'am.
They're all, you just said they're voluntary?
That's
that what you
correct.
just- I didn't hear that.
By proffer, the stormwater quality is in the regional facilities to the south. We could
Jay,
do
you're
nothing.
not getting it. You're not getting it. We
Well, if I
want
could please.
more. This is Reston. We want green roofs everywhere unless there's some reason not to put them in. Not because you made a proffer for it, because it's the right thing to do and the planet is on fire.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. We are committing to adding a green roof, intense green roof to the core area in the center. There are certain provisions with that, percentage of that space that's open, what we can do that makes sense from water quality and getting water to those features on the roof, or pardon me, on the podium. All actions have reactions. There's parking beneath there that goes for the retail and the potential ownership units directly below that. That is a deck space. So all that has a structural design and a accessible design for the water to get to those features. Tammy, I wish I had a more robust answer for you, but that's not the development program for this project. We have the green and roof, and we're also looking at our scorecard for LEED, but right now there are no
What LEED
green
level
roofs.
are you?
We are committing to silver.
You need to talk to William Pegways about your green roof and your purple roof and really get him to explain how you are advantaged from having that. You're not disadvantaged, and you're not going to have your parking lot leaking. Nobody wants a leaky parking lot. Okay, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, that's where we are. We have wood frame buildings. They're type 3 over type 1. We have the white poly roofing for lower impact heat absorption. These are split systems, so there'll be units on the deck.
And I think as importantly, one of the reasons communities like this are successful is because of the type of lifestyle that gets people out of their cars. I mean, it gives us a chance to maximize the public infrastructure investment that is Metro, and allows people to live closer to where they can work, live closer to where they can shop. And that is as important as just about any other decisions we can make in terms of improving the environment. Instead of locating these residences out in West Virginia and having them drive to jobs, there's an opportunity for utilizing mass transit and utilizing pedestrian trips. And that's such a key way to achieve a lot of our green goals.
All right, Tammy, I wasn't sure if you were done.
Oh, I'm done, and I'm waiting for William Pegways to get.
Okay, well, William Pegways is actually next.
Fabulous.
Followed by Bill Penniman and then me.
Okay. White roofs are essentially technically bad. White roofs reflect the heat back up, so you're double heating the atmosphere. The tests that have been performed on a day where the ambient air temperature is 72 degrees on a bright sunny day, the white roof comes up at basically about 110 degrees at the surface of the white roof. The vegetated roof with a very small, short plant like a sedum, which basically only is about varying between 3 to 6 inches tall. Because of the shading value from the plants themselves, even though they are of minimal height, the temperature at the top of the dirt is 1 degree lower than the ambient air temperature at 71. So you want to think about that in what terms of insulation savings you might have, or leave the insulation alone, and then maybe a lot of HVAC can be a little bit lower or a lot lower. You're going with an intensive roof, and so that leads to two interesting things. One, it's a little thicker and provides even more insulation value. The other is that if you go and investigate a site called Purple Roof, you will see that it will assist in your stormwater mitigation management. It will let you do a different kind of vegetated roof. Still the same if you want to do sedums, but you know, it'll give you more options. If you were looking at solar, you can actually plant, or even any other equipment, you can actually plant sedums as well as a number of other kind of plants underneath the panels. It makes the panels run more efficiently and last a longer life. In addition, once you've done a green roof, what tends to happen in an urban setting, which this is rapidly becoming more and more urban, a couple of years later, you may be approached by a urban farming company. Two of my projects that I did downtown, 3 to 5 years after they were built, suddenly they're growing commercial agriculture on the roof. So you end up with a leasable space. Sometimes they do it in conjunction with charities. Sometimes they're actually selling the produce to the members of the building or to adjacent restaurants. It's a very active area. Office buildings as well as residential buildings have this on them. You can find that information at one of the urban farming companies, which is called Up Top Acres. They'll be glad to come out and talk to you anytime. A little bit about natives. There's really no excuse for not going 100%. And by the way, just to let you know, Reston Association has a position paper where they are liking to see and suggesting that in the future for all development in Reston, that it be 100% natives, and that the natives doesn't mean just Virginia or the US, it means specific to natives to Fairfax County. If you're thinking of solar, like I said above, you can plant plants underneath the solar panels. They don't have to be up in the air very high. They can be just on the normal canted type of support system for them, and plants will grow very well underneath of them. So, you know, if you're looking at also wood frame construction, there's kind of like no excuse for not doing it, because they do these all over the country, where typically it's like your current thing with podium of concrete and then wood frame on top of that. They actually have a number of projects around the country where they have vegetated roofs on those, and they're residential projects all over the country, meaning one of the nicest ones is up in Michigan, and they have really considerable weather conditions there. They're much more vigorous than what we have here, both lots of rain and even colder conditions. So, you know, this thing about the white roof being a good thing is really, it's a hangover from the early LEED stuff, where people didn't know, and actual tests had not been done and reports had not been written about what white roofs actually do. They really don't do very much at all, except, yeah, they're a better performer than a black roof. So that's it. Thank you.
I do appreciate the commentary. We'll definitely look at the white roof. You're right. I'm a old guard from the first days of lead, so maybe that's my hangover from lead. But we do have a good consultant on board to help us with our lead objectives, and I'll bring that up with them. Thanks.
And white roofs get dirty, so they
Yeah,
are very long.
terrible foreground architecture.
All right, Mr. Penniman.
Just a few things. One, I was pleased to hear about the electric appliances. I think that'll be good for your residents. As far as the EV, I also appreciate your intent to incorporate conduit to anticipate expansion. You'll need panels, a room for panel space as well to anticipate the expansion. I think you didn't specify a quantity, but I hope you will at least have the cheap expansibility that conduit provides to get to eventually potentially 50%. May never go that high, may stop at 30, maybe to, but it's going to be a lot bigger, and down the road it'll save you a lot of hassle and money, and your customers, your residents as well. Do you have yet a target for how much expansibility you're thinking of building in through the addition of
We don't.
Okay.
The detail is we have limited space for our transformers. We need to finalize. We've got our load letters in. They include the 20 spaces that'll be EV ready and where they're going between the two garages. The rest of that puzzle is transformer capacity for future expansion. That's on our agenda for things to, as we go through our design meetings. So it's on the list, but I can't tell you exactly how many additional spaces that might be.
I think it would be smart to think big in terms of being prepared, because people are hoping that half the cars sold by 2030 are going to be electric, and you'd lose a heck of a lot of market if you can't accommodate them.
Yeah, Ford's banking on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're putting big money in. In terms of this picture we have on the screen on the east building, there is this rectangle in the middle. Is that the garage?
Yes, that is. That's the precast garage that the building wraps around. That's correct.
Okay. So I mentioned last time that putting solar above that top of the garage will be beneficial to the people who have to park up there, and will become a selling point and can provide electricity essentially for free once it's in, for building operations and residents. So I would strongly urge you to think about doing that, because you've got to accommodate the wires, the conduit for the wires and so forth. You need to plan it from the beginning, and after the fact it's potentially too late. Even if you just lay the groundwork, that would be an improvement. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great point, Bill. It's something we're going to take a pretty hard look at, and especially whether it's the roof or the parking structure itself. We're just not sure yet, but we're taking a pretty hard look at it.
And you may be able to find somebody who will do it basically for free. In other words, the electricity saved, they will use as the means of paying for the upfront construction. That's certainly done on a lot of buildings these days. The county has a program for that for its new buildings and its existing buildings, and essentially no upfront money on your part. So think about that, and I'd be happy to talk to you further if I can be of any use. And then the last thing, I had a question about you referred to a wood structure building. Is that one of your buildings, or is that something nearby?
No, that's Commissioner Carter had asked about it at the previous meeting, and that is this office building, 100,000 square feet adjacent, and that has already gone through FDP.
Okay.
It's going to start construction soon, and I think Commissioner Carter wanted me to highlight that as also part of the things Brookfield's looking at overall.
Okay. Well, you want to redesign your building and do that? That would be a great idea. Okay. I think those are my only questions at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I think most of my questions had been answered by the presentation to date. I do want to just go back to some of the really good things about this plan. The articulation along Reston Parkway, I think, was a real plus from where the CDP was and where the FDP now shows a couple of bump outs and really helps to minimize or lessen the abruptness of that edge along Reston Parkway. I think is a good thing. The only other comment I'll just add is the streetscapes along like Road A, and then this other road, to the west. Since there's not a lot of ground level activity there, just to try to green that up as much as possible. I think Sue made that comment at the last meeting, especially along Road A. Some of the pictures showed a little starkness at the ground plane. And anything we can do to just green that up a little bit and not have just so much just pavement and building at the building would be helpful. But just something to think about. But no, all in all, I think the plan looks good. Commissioner Carter, do you have any comments? John, we're not hearing you. You're muted.
There we go.
There we
So
go.
when we get to the commission, we're going to have a better presentation on stormwater management. It can't be, well, we're just going to use the existing ponds. That has not been flying on projects. You've got public streets all around this except for the southern streets. Don't you think you can put since you moved that gas line, can you put some trees between the sidewalk and the curb there? I think that would help there's something wrong with that drawing. You don't see the depth of it, and putting a few trees in there, I think we should look at that. I know DOT makes it hard on you.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about sorry, I'm getting over to that southern frontage here. This frontage, is this the one you're talking about? Road
No,
D?
the one on Reston Parkway.
Oh, yes. So sorry. So yeah, the double
That
trees.
one.
Yeah.
Seem like you ought to look at that. Then we're developing a whole set of details to get people to the metro station. So you've got very little on-street parking. We don't want any of those depressed boxes where you have on-street parking, and preferably none in the whole thing. That is really a mistake that we're doing in other places in Fairfax County. And we made a fuss about not doing that anymore in Reston. We never really started to do that in Reston. The double ramps at the corners, straight curbs, separation between the planting boxes so that you can actually get to the front door. Since these are public streets, you're hampered by what you can do with the street lights, but make sure you start at the corners. I think, given the size of this project and the WDUs, there is no ordinance for the WDUs. It's a policy. And yes, you're correct. You can do it that way to put all the units in one building. We haven't been doing that in Reston. So we would like an equal amount, not equal, proportional amount in each building. And then even within the building, we would like them scattered. Let's see. Oh, the phasing of the green space. You explained it, but I'm not sure I got it all. The notion is, can you present it in a way so that as each phase comes along, you have an adequate amount of open space. And then that whole discussion about these roofs and solar panels. Why don't you take a look at that? I think that building on the west would lend itself to green roofs. And I thought Bill Penniman's comment about the parking garage, you're probably going to have a split deck there if you're going to have cars up on there. But why don't you look at the solar panels on there And we're getting an awful lot of that down in the district, and Fairfax is just way behind in this aspect. I think it would round out this project and it would go with the wood building. Actually, your two buildings are wood, right? You're actually building them in wood, or are they steel?
They're wood frame.
Yeah,
wood
that's,
frame.
so they are wood buildings. So there you go. Those are my comments. And I'd like to have another session with you, depending on what happens tonight on the vote. Make sure we go over these details again.
Absolutely, before the planning commission hearing.
But hit that accessory, that access to the metro station, where our curbs and our ramping and these depressed boxes are wreaking havoc on our pedestrians, and we've been avoiding that on the last projects in Reston. I hope that we continue to do that here. You're not doing that here, are you? Are those boxes depressed? There's no reason to do that. Yeah, good. And then you can see the double ramping at the corner. I know this is a little bit detailed, but we this is the silver line. We want to get people to the silver line.
Yep.
And we've actually been preventing a lot of people from getting to the silver line. Your project has focused on this quite a lot, and I'd like you to be able to present that in a real positive way when we get there.
We'll work with Brookfield on making sure we have that.
So it's presenting the stormwater management, the open space in the correct light, the right details, the WDUs, and then maybe this notion of green roof and solar panels. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Understood.
And maybe some trees on Reston Parkway. There's something wrong with that drawing. I think the setback is more than what's shown on the drawing. Somehow, seems like it, maybe.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. So I think that rounds out. I think we got everybody. Please speak up if I missed anybody. I see a couple hands up. Let me go to Bill Penniman. Is your hand up for?
That was a hand not taken down from the last vote. My apologies.
Got it. Okay. And let's see if William Pegues, is that the same thing there? Do you have any further comments? I'm going to take that as a no. David Vanel.
I meant to say, I was muted myself. No, I have no further comments, but pretty adamant about the ones I made.
Okay.
I have a comment.
I'm getting to you, Tammy. David Vanel, do you have any? Your hands up?
Thank you, Rob. I had one more thing I neglected to ask. Last time I asked about the mix of resident dwelling sizes, and they seem to be focused. Developers seem to be focused mostly on studio and one bedroom. Have you folks been able to see your way clear to offering some 2 and 3 bedroom, more 2 and 3 bedroom units in that building?
We've always had 1, 2, and 2 bedroom dens. I don't have the mix directly in front of me. When this came up a month ago, the question was more, can you look at 3 bedroom units? As I explained at that time, our unit mix is based on some pretty good analytical study of the market. Others may disagree with what they perceive the market demand to be. We're trying to project 2 and 3 years out. Never say never. The mix is now in that bracket of 1s, 2s, and 2 dens. As we slide into schematic development and move past the point of no return when we hit design development, we'll have that locked in. That's currently where we are.
So just as a follow-up, what are your percentages of 1 bedroom studio, a bedroom and a den? What are you working on?
I do apologize. I don't have those numbers directly in front of me. Let's peek and look at those on the plans real quick. They're in the submission set that we provided a copy of with the FTP.
Sorry, Jay, I don't have the plan set in front of me.
Okay. I'll provide those.
Thank you.
All right, Tammy, I'm just gonna go to Michelle and then Tammy.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one comment and question though, because David, you had mentioned that you're really trying to make sure that people can live, work, and play. That is also going to school. So where would the school buses pick up for kids, and what type of a safe bus route and safe walking plan to get to schools? Which I'm assuming, which school zone would the children of these units be in?
Right. So let me verify that with Mark in terms of it, but these very likely are in the South Lakes Pyramid. I just don't know if they're Rachel Carson or Langston for the middle and which elementary it is. You raise a great question about the school bus. I think it would be dependent on when these come online relative to the residential building to the north and how they would work together with them and the schools on how you would load in the way that's the safest, that makes sense for residences of both buildings. Let me get with Mark Looney, who represents Brookfield and the larger developer, and see if that question hasn't already been answered at the CB level that I'm just not aware of right now.
Okay, thank you. And then just again, I mean, I know children who go to my son's elementary school who live at some of the new apartments near the metro. So I think we have to plan for children. And
Yes,
I would just, that was one point that I talked about last time, and just not having enough space for them on site. And so I don't know what can be done with that, the small, amenity space on site with that raised courtyard, but that does still concern me. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Tammy.
Thank you. I do want to compliment this project on going to all electric and making some positive changes. But in that we have so many questions that are not able to be answered tonight, I make a motion we defer the vote on this until there is one more meeting before you go to the PC, that you come back with the answers and the clarifications. I think there's just too much we don't know. I would not be able to vote for this given, and I would like to. I think the Wegmans.
We would like you to too. So
it's wonderful, but I just don't think we have enough solid information, and I think improvements can be made that will give us more comfort. Thank you. I make a motion that we defer.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. So we're not quite ready for motions yet, but I just wanted to, number one, confirm there was nobody from the public that needed to speak or had any, so I have to check the chat.
Yeah. Rob, can I make one brief comment?
Yeah, Jay, I wanted to give Jay and David, both of you, a chance to kind of, after you've heard all these comments, to have a say, and then we'll open up for motions.
Okay. David, can you go to the last slide that shows the approved CDP and where we're headed? I really do appreciate the commentary. A lot of these questions are good. They raise our consciousness to a level of detail, and we appreciate it. I think the biggest point I'd like to make is we're not perfect. We are, as most developers, we are collapsing a set of competitive issues. Cost escalation has been absolutely crazy. We're trying to underwrite where we think we'll be at the time of construction. Rents have actually gone a little flat. That's been tough. We'd love to commit to certain things early. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can. The green provisions are super important. I think we're all mired in our own past experiences with less successful ventures with sedum and green roofs on wood frame structures. Having said all that, I do think that we would really appreciate you all taking stock in what could have been, which would have been a subpar, really poor use of this property with what was approved with where we are. And Tammy, I see you looking at you. We are in a much, much better place. We will make it better. And we have heard your commentary. But I really think that's an important factor to look at. We've integrated some nice retail on the ground floor. It's at the right corner of this site. It's really focusing everything to the north and the west as you head toward the metro. It's really a great complement to the catalyst activity north of us with the Wegmans and all the other developments that are coming online. And this garage is a shared garage, so we've reduced parking demand significantly, and we've got a state-of-the-art system that's going to go into this garage to manage that. So having said that, we do have record of the commentary. We will provide good answers and a better way to present this going forward. But I just did want to close with that comment. I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. And then David, I did want to make sure we got across your planning commission presently is scheduled, I believe, for the 17th of November.
Correct.
Which puts it prior to our November meeting. I just wanted to point that out. I think our November meeting is on the 20th or 19th.
Robert, check your calendar. I was thinking it
I
might be.
think it's after, Rob, because I think our November meeting, the 1st is a Mondays. So the third
15th.
Monday is the 15th.
You're absolutely right. It's I think we have
another meeting.
A lot of Mondays. Sorry, I can't get my calendar to open. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I presume we could come back on the 15th was the date I saw.
Okay. Okay, David, any closing words?
I think Jay summed it up well, and that again, this is a piece in a larger CDP. It's one of the Lego blocks, and I know it's important to get the Lego blocks as best we can, but again, it's a careful balancing of the site overall. And I think Mark Looney touched on this about the open spaces that were designed to support this, how the stormwater system works overall, how this encourages folks to live and get to Metro and to not have to use their cars in their lifestyle. So just that bigger picture consideration here, I don't want it to get in the way of a 10 out of 10 project for every person, if because it's an important piece to make all of Haley's Rise work overall.
All right, so we can do two things. One, we can agree to have you come back in November, or we could actually take a vote, which it sounds like Tammy's ready to make a motion. We can go either way here.
I mean, setting aside everything else, Commissioner Carter certainly expressed his question. I think we need to roll up or have another follow-up meeting with you, Commissioner Carter, to answer your specific questions. I think we'll know more coming out of that meeting. Jay, you can kick me virtually in the shins here under the table, but I think coming back on the 17th with something that addresses what Supervisor Commissioner Carter had asked us to address, I think makes the most sense right now. But if you're worried about the timing, Jay, let me know. But based on the discussion here, getting the right answers
on the Monday the 15th, correct?
Yeah.
A few days prior to, and I'd like to see if we can get a work session with Commissioner Carter and interested parties ahead of then. I think we're really right there. It's just I think it's a matter of identifying a few details and making sure folks are comfortable with our plan of development.
And I think, to your point, Tammy, that we'll also have the final staff report at that point and development conditions.
That's exactly right.
So
we need to see that.
I think that makes sense to me.
This is Bill Penniman. Just let me just say, I think that does make sense. But I'll also say that looking at the image on the screen right now, what you've moved to is already a huge improvement. I want you to get credit for that. But I do think that there are these questions that it would be helpful for us to hear on the 15th and see what the staff says and move on.
More than happy to come back. No problem.
Okay, so it sounds to me we don't need to take a vote tonight, that you're agreeing to come back in November, which sounds like it's probably the wisest move, and get a few things answered, cleaned up, and again, get you. But I appreciate you listening to the comments. I think there was a lot of good dialogue tonight, and as Bill just pointed out, there's a lot of good things about the project, that it's moving and definitely in the right direction from where some of the earlier plans were. So with that, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to thank you. Sounds great. See you November 15th.
All right, great. Appreciate your time tonight. So that'll conclude that application for this evening. So the only other administrative stuff that we as a committee haven't talked about, I'll just mention it tonight, and maybe we could maybe do this with you through email. There's a lot of these, when these applications come in, we've always had the requirement for applicants to send us prints, and then we've gotten into a habit of we get some information electronically and some not electronically. So we've tried to migrate towards having everything that's submitted to us should be coming to us electronically, number one, so we all have a file, and eventually we want to be able to put it in a spot where everybody has access to it. We're looking at our website right now. Our website has a lot of challenges that don't allow us to do certain things. Plus, we don't pay our IT guy very, very much, which is also, and he apologized for not being able to be here tonight. So, but the question comes down to, some of you all like to receive electronic submissions only, and others like the smaller plans are fine, and others even have requested, why don't we still get full-size plans, because the little plans are hard to read. So we're kind of all over the place right now as a group in terms of what our preferences are, which is fine, but it's hard when applicants ask, how should we disseminate this information? It's sometimes difficult to know, what's going to be the right avenue for everybody to work with. And if we all want to have something different, we could create a list, and then that list could be published, and that publicized list could say, Tammy wants a full-size copy, Rob Walker wants a electronic, and David Vanel wants, it delivered in a different way. That could possibly work too, but so all I ask is be thinking about that. And as we try to modernize our website, the goal is going to be to have a place to locate electronically all this information so that everybody, including the public, would have access to it. And then the likelihood is that then if people want a mailed copy or something beyond that, maybe that'll be where we have to make a different provision and have that publicized to the applicants so that they'll know what to do and get it out to us in advance, if that makes sense.
Hey, Rob, are you all thinking about having, one of the problems I think with the website too is it's just hard for people to find it. And that's due in part to the domain, the URL. It's just not, intuitive that that's what this is about. Are you considering that we find a way to fund like an actual website with, just for the committee itself?
Yes, Michelle, I think that's where we should be going. I've kind of reached out to the county, and I'm going to see if there's any help they can provide. in this situation where, you know, I think that website address was, you know, certainly set up on the cheap because we don't have big budgets here or any budget at all. And it's just kind of existed for so long, but now it's time to, we need to modernize. We need to somehow figure out how to get a portal and I think we've already recognized maybe our meetings could be housed on YouTube, and that might be okay to do that and not jam up our website with videos and stuff. But so Jake's been helping a little bit on the IT side, and you know he's kind of determined what the limit is of our present site, and now we're just trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? How can we take the leap to the next step, and what would that look like? And you know, what type of is there an expense, and is there a way to fund that?
Okay, if I can be of assistance, I'm happy to help. It's what with my husband and I do. My husband works for Squarespace, the website building company. Not that he can help us on a discount, but certainly at least, you know, with some of the different services if we're going to try to find something on our own.
Appreciate that, Michelle.
You know, Rob, Kelly, I love getting some of the printed material through the mail, but it seems as if people send, you know, 25 sheets, these gigantic sheets, probably a third of which are really relevant to our evaluation. Many of them have such detail that doesn't necessarily pertain to what we have to evaluate. I mean, it depends on the you know, on the application, but it's just, it seems like some gigantic overload and a waste of paper, which does concern me.
Yes, I agree.
I don't have a solution though. Sorry.
Yeah, on the other hand, I find that when I try and blow those things up to read the print, it gets fuzzy to the point I can't read the print blown up. And
yeah,
I read it when it's too small. So I don't know the answer, but we should talk about it.
I hear you. I hear you. It's tough. It's really tough.
And sometimes you flip between sheets on the paper goods to compare different elevations and what's going on. And that's almost impossible with an electronic copy, unless you really have a huge monitor and you can have two things going at the same time. And then they're portrait or landscape, and that doesn't work either. So I would prefer a paper and always an electronic copy to be able to see, you know, the print that you can't read on the paper. But I prefer both. But we need to go through and make a grid, I guess, who wants what and see what the majority is. And thanks.
It just seems like there's a lot of redundancy, you know, you know, if you get 25 sheets of paper, these, you know, 11 by 17 sheets of paper, and some of them are redundant or they're just not to our particular review. So I don't exactly know how we can specify what we want and need, but maybe we should think about that at least.
Well, sometimes it's safety issues of how roads curve. Sometimes it's stormwater management that is very important.
I know.
You're right. It, you know, some people would only look at certain sheets. Others have to look at other kinds of sheets. I don't know how you would discern who needs what.
It depends on the application. It depends on
absolutely depends on the application.
What they're applying for, you know.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough.
Rob, this is Dave Vanell. If Jake had a little bit of a budget, do you think he could handle a more robust website? Could he build us a more robust website with a bit of a monthly stipend?
Jake has told me that's not his world. He knows enough to be dangerous, but that's not what he does. He's an IT guy, but he's not a website maker guy.
Yeah, I can chime in. You know, Jake and I worked together for years, and he's like a system admin guy. He's a network design guy, and he's done his best to get the website a little bit better, but we wouldn't be the right guys. It does sound like Michelle might have some expertise that is more in line with what we need to have done.
And again, I have reached out and I need to follow up and figure out who's the right person to talk to at Fairfax County. Is there a help that they can, and assistance that they can provide to a group like ours that you know is, you know, a public group that you know, can they help us in this endeavor, and just need to get to the right person.
I talked with Jose.
I have, yeah. So we're working on that.
It seems that if we wanted to reach the largest audience, and I know that some might not agree with this idea, but I'm still going to suggest it, it would be to see if at least we could have a page housed on Fairfax County's website. And that would also provide the links to the uploaded plans. So then perhaps we're not having to pay the cost of being able to store all of those plans somewhere, if that makes sense. But I also see the value and importance of being outside of the county or our own entity. But it is just something to consider, that we might get more views and more clicks if we are part of the county's website.
See, Rob, John Carter, we might talk to the county. I could do it too. They have redone their whole outreach program through the computer. It's much harder to use, I find.
It is.
But it has more things on it, so that might be something worth exploring. And all these applications are on that website, but again, it's hard to find.
No, I appreciate that, John. Yeah, I just need to dig into it, get to the right person, and just see what resource they can provide. You know, like Michelle has a good comment there, and whether or not the county would even allow us to be on, you know, linked to them. You know, certainly ask the question, and or if they could be leaving a resource or link back to the county file system. There's a number of different ways I could envision it being done.
But the applications are there. Maybe the county should come to this group and show you how to, I mean, I'd like them to come to me, frankly, but they come to this group and show you how to get to their site, and maybe that would help.
Right.
To do that on Zoom, I think they could demonstrate that.
Good. Sorry, I've been hiding.
That's all right.
And lurking.
Just really fast, we really don't need a lot from a website, especially, I mean, if the files are stored on the county site and we can access those and just provide links on a site, it could be a very simple and easy site.
That might work. Jose can probably show us shortly.
Yeah, what often happens though is the drawings that we will sometimes get are not what has been submitted to the county, at least yet. Maybe not so much on the initial submissions, but like the follow-up submissions. So
yeah, maybe.
For example, some of the files we received on Isaac Newton probably weren't submitted yet.
You're right.
So we have that little bit of a glitch there, but we'll work through that. This is good comment and good kind of dialogue. That here we all know that what the problem we have is now we have to figure out how to modernize that. That's all, and we're trying to get there, and again, some of that might come out through emails and just trying to get some ideas and generate some thought as we progress. And if Jake were on the line, at least he could better describe the limitations that we're presently under. But I think we all realize we want to migrate away from that crazy addressed website that we're on right now. So I don't have anything else tonight. If anybody else has anything that needs to be mentioned to the group, I guess it's an open forum at this point.
We do need to think about the committee for nominations for members for terms expiring, and please, Ron Weber is gone. So his slot is open. So that the seats change in January. That means we have November and December to put the call out, get the applications, review them, and make the decisions. So I think that needs to be at least thought about.
No, that's a very good point, Tammy. Yeah, we're kind of at we're certainly at a point where some of the associate members who have really been acting as regular members, just because we haven't our number's not up to fully at 18, so we've been acting almost as a group of 15, I believe. And so, you know, we're not obligated to have associate members. We can certainly do that, or we could decide to go with just 15 regular members and bring the associates to full membership, or and vote on that. Or you know, as we can see, our meetings get pretty long when we go through a list if we have a good attendance. And I'm not opposed to having more members. It just becomes harder for us all to manage the time.
Well, if we could have at least a poll of people whose terms are expiring, and if they desire to continue, or they're moving, or whatever, that we know that would be helpful.
That's a good point. Let me make sure that's publicized right away.
Yeah, and I sure would hate to lose any of our associate members. I think they've been valuable. So
Absolutely.
Say, Rob, I actually hesitate to mention this, but I think it's a good idea that maybe a presentation from the comp plan task force at some point. Tammy's smiling, but probably, I don't know when that would be, but sometime when we don't have a lot of applications as part of the outreach for that, maybe coming to this group would be good.
Hey, John, I know me and Rob, I reached out to Rob, I think maybe like a couple months ago about the exact same thing. I know the task force is working diligently with their report, but we would want them at least engaged in community engagement even before that. So I just want to, it's something that we could bring up to the task force if that's something that they would like to present to the P&Z at a later meeting.
Yeah.
As they start to, wind down. And we have some members in the task force in this group too.
Yeah, so we've been just juggling what's the right time for that. When would they be ready? When would the content be at a point where it's, I guess, for our consumption? So it does look like we're going to have a full agenda for November. The application that we saw tonight that's going to come back, and then there's another application. I think Fannie Mae wants to come back to us in November, and they're tentatively on the November agenda. So, and as we're finding, we can only handle about 2 applications max on any given night. So just be aware of that.
Did we also have to, was there the applicant's questionnaire? Did we need to update that? Or is that already?
So Michelle, that's a good question. So we did put on the applicant's questionnaire the requirement for them to submit electronically to us no matter what. And that's just, we're trying to just have that be as an absolute. It doesn't replace the printed plans. It doesn't replace the mailings. It just says applicants who filed should be all submitting an electronic copy so we can make that available. So I think that was the one update. And then we moved the questionnaire to a place on our website that is quickly recognizable so the applicants know where to go. It was previously a little bit buried. But I'm sure the questionnaire can always be updated. I mean, we probably should form a subcommittee to even keep looking at it, stare at it, and add things to it. But we put that together as now it's been quite a while ago, and I'm sure there's some more later ideas could be added to that.
We might also want to look at updating it after the comp plan is finished and approved, because that might change some of the questions too.
Yes, yes. All right, everybody. So it's almost 10 o'clock. So I'm going to say, in case there's any other questions, maybe we'll call it a night.
Sounds
Hearing no
good.
objections,
Adjourn.
hearing
No.
no objections, we'll say that that's good. I do appreciate everybody's comments tonight. I thought it was really good dialogue. I think applicants are going to start getting it, and it'll just make for a better Reston. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rob.
everybody.
Thanks,
Good
Rob.
night, everyone.